I'm going to call the Planning Commission meeting for Monday, March 28th, 2016, even though it says 2014 here. Discover a rift in time or something like that. Lady. Cool. So anyway, we're calling the Planning Commission meeting for Monday, March 28th, 2016 to order. So we will have the invocation. Lord, bless this meeting and all of the participants. Help us to make wise decisions and to come to the decisions that will be of best benefit to all the citizens of Canby. Hope that pray that everybody gets home safely this evening. And in your name, amen. Amen. Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'll start off by calling for citizen input on non-agenda items. Okay. Minutes from the last meeting are not available. So for public hearing this evening, we will consider a request for a text amendment to increase the membership size of the Historic Review Board. Brian.
So we probably need, since it is a public hearing, to read the public hearing script minus those two items I mentioned.
Okay. The matter presently before the hearing board requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please be prepared to step forward to the microphone at the appropriate time. State your name, mailing address, and interest in the matter. For those people other than the applicant that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please sign in on the sheet or speak up when we call for testimony. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. Generally, the applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each, the opponents will be given 5 minutes each, and those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 10 minutes for rebuttal. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to become a part of the record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the applicable land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Although I'm not sure that this will apply, and that will apply to this. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may prejudice an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it is only to concur with previous testimony. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest to please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing the present matter.
Mr. Chair, I'm a member of the HRB, so I'm going to abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Sirlett. The public hearing format will be as follows. Oh, I should ask, does any member of the audience have any questions for any commissioner on conflict of interest? Okay. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. First, we'll have the staff report, questions, if any, by the hearing body of the staff, and then we will open the public hearing for testimony. Applicant, not more than 15 minutes. Proponents, not more than 5 minutes each. Opponents, not more than 5 minutes each. Neutral, not more than 5 minutes each. Rebuttal by the applicant, not more than 10 minutes. Then we'll close the public testimony, and then there will be questions, if any, by the hearing body. We will then have discussions and deliberations by the hearing body, and no additional testimony unless specifically allowed by the chair. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure outlined for this hearing? Okay. Now we will move swiftly.
Great. Good evening, Commissioners. Brian Brown, Planning Director, to present this report this evening. It is a legislative text amendment. The provisions that we're proposing to change are in the Land Development and Planning Ordinance, and therefore they're required to go through the land use process for amending those, which includes a recommendation from the Planning Commission that's then forwarded to the City Council to make a final decision on any text amendment to our Land Development Code. This request was initiated by city staff at the request of the Historic Review Board. They met and recommended that we make this proposed change, and in your packet you'll see a letter from the chair of the Historic Review Board, Carol Palmer, who is here tonight, indicating some of the reasons that she felt this was a suitable change to make. And the request is pretty simply to provide the opportunity to increase the membership size for the Historic Review Board. It's currently, there's an ordinance attached as well that eventually, if you recommend approval and the council approves this, it would show exactly how the changes in the text would happen with cross-outs and the red showing the new additions. And the request is to try to increase the participation in the Historic Review Board. That's somewhat of a working kind of committee, and by taking advantage of what they see as some potential increased community involvement, and therefore the more people you can get involved, the more work that can get done, and the better opportunity for making decisions at meetings when some people aren't able to attend, and various reasons along those lines. They've been thinking about this for quite some time, and I think informally had even talked to the city council at one point. And I remember some discussion not too long ago, a couple years ago, when they revived this Historic Review Board, and it had been defunct or non-operational for about 7 years. And so they started, in order to facilitate it starting up again, they had as low as 3 members could operate a decision board for the community, and change that to indicate 3 to 5. And so I've continued that wording from 3 to 5 or 7. And it's not that conventional to actually have boards or committees, advisory to the council, that don't say one specific number. So that is an option. We can just say 7. But I left the wording the way it is because it hasn't really caused a problem being that way, and it allows the increased flexibility that at any point in the future, should there be difficulty in filling seats on the Historic Review Board, they can easily go back down to one of these odd numbers. The odd numbers are simply an attempt to not have ties when they vote on things, if you have everyone present. And oftentimes, there is a missing member or something at some of the meetings, and so you're always going to have that opportunity for a potential tie vote, whether you have 7, 5, or 3 members, if you have somebody absent. But that's the basic request here, and it's a pretty simple change because, as you can see from the ordinance, we're just kind of adding half of a sentence to do that. And I just use the word "an opportunity" because if we leave the wording as proposed, we don't absolutely have to have 7 members. They can operate with 3 or 5 as well. So is there any questions?
Not at this time, for me.
Yeah, actually, I do. I'm wondering why we're using that floating number and why we just don't go to 7, period. I was looking
Yeah.
at some of the other boards from Parks and Rec, and they all just state 7.
And basically, I explained that by the fact that when they tried to start this board up, someone proposed that wording. I don't know how it got there, but today it says 3 or 5. And so it's been operating for a couple of years with that. And so I just continued on that aspect of it. And I indicated, just as you have, that there is no reason why it couldn't simply be 7,
I mean,
which is conventional. And if you
That's our
feel like
word.
that's a little bit more suitable, I went back and forth. I wrote 2 reports, one each way, and finally settled on this because I thought maybe it had slight more flexibility for operating.
I was just going through the rest of the boards after I saw this.
Yeah, all the others are,
They're all called, we call 7. I mean, how
Yeah.
long did we operate as 5? You know, it doesn't mean you can't operate as 5. It just
Right.
means that you can max at 7. So I don't know that I like the option wording in it myself.
one of the things I've seen in the past, and we've wrestled with this as operating on the Planning Commission, and we've made some, I've seen it written 2 different ways, and we've made some interpretations here that when you try to operate with a quorum, I know from previous places I've been that technically a quorum is not a majority of the seated members, but a majority of the appointed members. And so you have 7 appointed members right now, and so you need 4 to hold a quorum. And we've had some times when that wasn't working well. And
Well, not in the last
no.
3 years, 4
but-
years.
Right.
But that's one of the things that could enter into and be confusing with it having 3, 5, or 7, and remembering which you're operating under.
I just think it'd be
at the
nice to
time.
clean it up like the rest of the language and all the rest of the code,
Yeah.
make it all, because I don't think that there was another board. I think the library board has 5. That's the only other board that doesn't have 7 now.
The interpretation that we ended up operating under on the Planning Commission a few times is when we did not have 7 appointed members, we said a quorum was then a majority of the then appointed
Right.
members. And so if we use that interpretation as we've been doing, there is no reason why it couldn't operate just fine. If you don't have 7 appointed members, then it's a majority of however many appointed members you have. And so under that interpretation of how to operate quorums, I can't see any reason that just saying 7 works fine as well.
I think it cleans it up a little nicer than this. This is a little ambiguous.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Do we have any testimony from proponents?
unless you want me to. Maybe I-
And you are?
Carol Palmer. Sorry.
I would like to hear from you, Carol.
Oh, okay, sure. I need to be up here.
So state your name and address.
Sure, Carol Palmer, 1646 North Ponderosa Street here in Canby. And I am the chairperson of the Historic Review Board. And we put this forth for a couple of reasons. It is very difficult sometimes to operate with a smaller board. One or two people are gone, and suddenly we've got two of us sitting in a room trying to make a decision or get input, and it's really limited, I think, our ability. We added another member and got up to 5 a couple of months ago, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and that's been really helpful. So the other thing I think that I am most concerned about is we've got some groups that we are really important customers of what we produce. We are in the public history business. We're putting stuff out, hopefully, that's going to increase the cultural and educational environment here. And one of the really important groups that we need to have, I think, at the table is someone from the school district. So my little recruitment plan that I have is to approach the school district and see if we can't get someone from the school district on our board. It could be a teacher, it could be a staff member, it could be somebody from the administration. We're not, we're pretty open to that. But that would be another great voice that we could use as we make decisions. The other thing that I am very interested in is trying to increase, to add someone from the Hispanic community to our board. And I am trying to find opportunities with groups. I've been looking through some of the Latino organizations. There are a couple of leadership organizations, a couple of business support groups where I think we can tap in and see if we can find someone, recruit someone to be on the board. And we can do that without having to ask, without waiting for someone existing on the board to resign or to leave. So.
Any questions for Carol?
I would, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, you fire away.
I would ask, what I was talking about with going to just a straight 7 members. Are you all right with that?
Oh, yes.
I like the language better than
Sure.
trying to make it a little bit, it looked a little weird to me. So I just wanted to know what your opinion of that was too, is if that was something you were pushing for, just something that was there already. So, okay, that's all I got.
So no, I have a question. I'm curious as to what are the requirements for someone to be on your board?
The only requirement that I'm aware of is that they have to be a member of, either live in Canby or work in Canby or be in the Canby urban growth boundary. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. And there's no requirement that anyone have any special education or experience in the history field. We have a state historic preservation office that is, in essence, our staff. And so most of what we do is through funding that's provided through that organization. I happen to have a PhD in history, so I can fill in a little bit of that blank that we have, but we really want the community to participate. This is about telling the story of Canby and making sure that that story is inclusive, but also gets presented in a way that's accessible to the most number of people. So that's why we want people from the neighborhoods, from the business community, from the school district to be on the board.
But do you actually go out and specifically target people from the business community or other groups? Because I noticed that as you said, you're looking to specifically add somebody from the Hispanic community and somebody from the school district. So it looks to me like you're targeting specific groups to the detriment of other groups.
I would hope not. We've got everybody on our board now is either retired or we've got John Baker, who is the editor of the local newspaper. And certainly we wouldn't turn anybody away. I mean, we're recruiting in certain areas, but if we had another person that was just like us sign up and want to be on the board, that's a decision I believe that the city council has to make as to who gets on our board. But, we certainly wouldn't turn that person away. And we are using all sorts of methods that are traditionally used to recruit people in the general way. So I know I've seen things on Facebook, I've seen Kim has posted things on, in the chamber newsletter at those times when we had some vacancies.
Would you have preferential treatment for those two groups, the school
no.
district or the Hispanic community? Because it sounds like that's kind of the hit that I got
Okay.
off of your letter, that there would be preferential consideration if you were Hispanic or worked for the school district in determining whether you would add a board member, which
No.
to me is discriminatory.
I'm going to be recruiting in those areas. I'm going to specifically be reaching out and talking to folks in those areas, but that doesn't mean that anybody else can't fill that slot. The slots will be open, and they'll go through the standard process.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
You bet.
I'm going to assume that there are no opponents, since there's only two of you here, and you're also probably not neutral either, are you? Okay, just a wild guess there. So we will close the public hearing, public testimony, and any further questions from anybody here?
I do have one, Mr. Chair.
You do have
For
one.
Brian Brown, actually.
Okay.
This is an advisory committee, but they are an advisory committee to who?
To the city council.
They're direct to the city council?
Right.
Okay, that was my question.
Okay. Any more questions? All righty. So we'll move along to discussion. Anything that you want to, Eric? Sean?
Just that language with the 3 to 5 thing, I think I'd really like to change
I
that.
might add that, actually, to answer your question, there are certain items that they would actually make a recommendation to you, and then you would make a recommendation onto the city council that are provided for in the land development ordinance. If someone was proposing to tear down a historic landmark, I think it needs to go through you as well. We just haven't done that, so I tend to forget about it.
Okay, so I guess then we will entertain a motion to approve the expansion of the historic board, the Canby Historic Review Board, for membership change. File number TA 16-01.
So I guess I have another question for Brian Brown.
Before we get to decision,
So since this is, what I'm looking at here is this ordinance that's written isn't something that, we're not approving this ordinance, that's something that you
Well, no,
modified for us.
what we would do is, if you want to have a consensus here before you actually act on the motion that you want to make it just straight 7, then if you're looking at the ordinance, looks like to me we would cross out any reference to 3 to 5 and just leave 7 individuals and get rid of the end of that sentence with membership total based on community interest that's in red. We just get rid of that. And then this ordinance, you would be able to say, yes, you're recommending the ordinance as written with those changes.
Those changes, okay, and that was
Yeah.
my question, if I need to really address that, or
Yeah.
if this was something that was.
And that would make it real clear as to what your findings were. And if you wanted, and in the record, I mean, we have findings here, we can change the record to indicate that one of your findings was that you felt that it needed to be cleaned up and not quite as confusing, and just 7 members is a better way to do it.
So taking consensus up here, is everybody on board with that? Am I the only one feeling that?
no?
No, I'm fine. I think it sounds good.
Yeah.
I think it just cleans it up better, and that way we can go forward, because all the other boards in town, other than the library board, are 7 members. So, and we functioned as multiple different entities at some point. We were 5 at one point. So, if you would like, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Okay, so
forge ahead.
I would like to make the motion that we approve TA-1601, but striking the references to 5 in number 2 of 1610-025, and striking the sentence, the end of the sentence, with membership based on community interest. And I think that is it.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. 7 members.
And thank you for getting that going again.
Yeah.
It's very appreciative.
Okay. Do we have any new business?
None.
Okay. So final decisions, I will entertain a motion that the final decision for TA 16-01 Historic Review Board membership size
Sorry.
be, there you go. But I will take that as not a motion.
No, it's not.
So,
I would move that we approve final, we can do final, right, on this at this
Right,
point?
and you need to make that we're going to add the findings that you've made
would-
tonight to this.
Okay, so I would move that we approve, final approved 1601 with our amendments as stated before.
okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Items of interest and a report from the staff. Ryan, it's all about you again.
I think we failed to send you our last bi-monthly report to the council, so maybe we can try to forward that to you. What is it? It's a month old now, isn't it? I think, but that might give you some reading material as to all the activity we've had in the past couple of months here, and how busy we've been, and so we can send that your way. Trying to think, we've got on your next meeting, the Sequoia Grove apartment project on April 11th? I'm trying to
That's what
remember
it
my
says.
dates.
Monday, April 11th.
And then we've got another application in with the same developer, IDM, that's adjacent to the apartments, which is the leftover property they own that they did not rezone to develop their Sequoia Grove Industrial Park. And so that application, haven't looked at it yet, but it came in last week, and so we'll be trying to get it scheduled. It's conceivable it could go on the other meeting in April, but is likely to be pushed into May. And if it does, then the first meeting in May is going to be very busy for you, because you'll have 3 annexations, if we can get those prepared on that first meeting in May. If not, we'll put it on the second meeting, and potentially this industrial park.
All righty. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any items of interest from the board? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Everybody wants to stay?
I'll motion.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You all have heard...